The time has come for us to talk about what has been the most anticipated horror movie of the year, Backrooms. This video will contain spoilers, so let's get into it. Now, before we get into the actual movie, for anyone who may be unfamiliar with the Backrooms and any of its lore, I'm going to give you a little bit of like a rundown, like a brief synopsis. In the summer of 2019, some anonymous user on 4chan posted this picture to a thread dedicated to unsettling images. Another user then replied with a caption: "If you're not careful and you no clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the backrooms." And this kind of took over the internet. It was categorized as liminal space horror, along with other like random pictures of different rooms and different, I don't want to say copies, but different areas. And people started to just pile on and create this backrooms world. It was in 2022 when Kane Parsons, who was 16 at the time, known online as Kane Pixels, uploaded a 9-minute short film to YouTube titled Backrooms Found Footage. In the short film, it shows VHS footage of a man who is clipping through the floor and being hunted by a distorted creature. This all leads up to where we are today, which is A24's newest edition and greatest success, Backrooms, also directed by Kane Parsons. Now, don't go in or watch this movie with the expectation of gaining any real knowledge as to what the Backrooms actually is. Just be prepared. The more you go into the movie, the more vague any of that feels, and personally, I kind of think that's the point. I'm not sure that you're supposed to understand what the Backrooms is ever. I don't know that you're supposed to learn what it is. It's almost like we're all on this journey together to explore what the Backrooms is. And it's ever changing in its evolution. I do have a lot of good things to say about this movie, and most of my actual opinions will be in the spoilers. There was a lot to like, from the character introductions, the setup to the Backrooms, the set itself. I think they built like 30,000 backroom sets or something like that. It was a crazy number. The tension building, the building of the backrooms, like as you explore through it with the characters and the characters' stories. The acting performances were also really strong, and the characters were all very believable. Now, there were moments, though, that felt like the pacing slowed way down for me, or it just wasn't holding me as much, or it just felt different, and not in a way that I enjoyed personally. There were definitely moments that just didn't work for me. And again, all of this will be in the spoilers. Like, any of what I actually talk about will be in that spoilers. I loved the found footage that they did. The majority of what had me creeped out in this movie was the found footage stuff that we got. It wasn't too shaky, and with it being in that VHS and grainy style, it had me squinting, trying to see, do I see something in the dark void, or is that just video static? It really kept its tension and suspension, and overall, I really liked this movie. It was a movie that worked overall. Now, here is your spoiler warning. If you haven't seen the movie or don't want spoilers at all, this is the part where you just pause and come back later after you've seen it. If you don't care about spoilers, then stick around, because I'm going to do a full rundown and give my thoughts as we go. So in this film, we follow two main characters. Clark, who is a failed architect. Wife had left him. He's a functioning alcoholic, the owner of a very struggling discount furniture store. And Mary, who is his therapist, who is also grappling with her own childhood trauma, which is very prevalent throughout the film, with her dreams and this piece of like concrete. It's like a handprint. It's like her concrete handprint from her childhood home that was demolished. Now, Clark's furniture store has been having some electrical issues, and one night when the man is just trying to wind down and watch TV, the store lights in the basement turn on, and he goes to turn them off. When he does, he sees light shining through the crack in the wall, putting his hands through it and phasing into our official look inside the backrooms. Now, Like most of us, Clark does the sensible thing and decides to go roaming around through the back rooms. I like the idea of making him an architect. I think it's clever. It gives a good explanation as to why and how he would be able to map out layers of the back room. And man, does he map out the back rooms. At certain points, you'll see it on a notepad. You'll see it on this giant whiteboard. Man really blueprints as much as he can of the back rooms. He even decides to show his therapist his drawing of this complete nonsense land because the one person I would want to tell is the only person who could diagnose me as crazy. He also gives us one of the only explanations we get from the backrooms, which is this place makes copies of things, like almost like memories, but they aren't quite right. And the more it remembers, the more it misremembers. The way Clark explains it is, imagine you explained a dog to someone who has never seen a dog and then asked them to draw it, which is probably the most fitting line in the whole movie, but also definitely something that you should say to your therapist, right? We later get into my favorite part of the film, which is, again, the found footage aspect of this movie. Clark, with the help of his assistant manager and her boyfriend, goes and films inside the backrooms after Clark tells his therapist that he's not crazy and he's going to get her proof. Clark begins to show these two around the backrooms what he has discovered and this one area that he hasn't discovered. And after going down this hole, we get a glimpse at the creature. It's distorted and we can't really make out what it is, but we know it's there. And this whole scene causes chaos and panic. As it drags one of the employees off screen, Clark then picks up the camera and he goes running off into different unexplored areas of the back room where he runs through different rooms, and it's kind of like we're following with him, right? Because he's got the camera and he's just, holding it and running. We see one room that kind of looks like a bathroom at one point. It's just tiles everywhere and none of the rooms make sense and they're all nonsensical. Goes into a room, it's got Christmas trees everywhere and, half out the floor and walls. We run into what we think may be potential threats. One lady who just kind of starts running at him and charging him, but in a I can't really run kind of way. It's very off-putting and different. As he's going through this scene, you're just waiting for where's the jump scare gonna happen? Is the scary thing gonna pop out and get him? We don't really see a lot of that. It's just the tension that it builds is really good. Now, after losing his employee and her boyfriend in the backrooms, Clark leaves Mary a voicemail explaining that he will no longer see her. And this is where the POV starts to shift from Clark to Mary. So Mary, after receiving the message, decides she wants to go check on Clark. She arrives at the store, which is unlocked, and there's a stack of mail that is gathered at the front door, late bills, and, obviously signs that the man has not been here for some time. After making her way through the store, she checks the basement where she finds her way into the back rooms. Now, when she goes into the basement, though, I think it's really a cool scene to see. Clark has this whiteboard there, and with the whiteboard, you can see all of these different layers with essentially names that he's given. I think they're names of the rooms, but just different points that he either has explored and checked off and things that he has not explored yet. I really think that detail's good, and I'm sure on my second watch I'll pause the screen and really get a look into it and see what's on that blueprint. So now Mary goes into the back rooms. Once she's in, she walks around for just a moment and she's met by Clark, who tells her that she's being too loud. When he slowly walks up to her, you hear this thud noise of what we think is the entity. He tells her not to worry, only then to choke her out. I mean, he gets behind her and he really chokes her out until she passes out. Mary then wakes up and she's strapped to a chair at a dinner table with Clark and these copies of people that don't look quite right. There's a man with multiple different eyes. There's a lady whose face looks like if the exposure on a camera wasn't quite right and she was turning her head back and forth and you would see all forms of it from left to right. It's very weird and off-putting. The dinner scene to this is something I really enjoyed. I thought it was definitely clear signs that Clark has been in this area and he has now lost his marbles in here. Clark basically wants Mary to do the therapy session all over again. They go through the rundown of why Clark is the way that he is, and coming to the conclusion that Clark doesn't want to change. He doesn't want to accept fault for anything that he does, and he doesn't care, and he doesn't want to change. He wants to be the way he is, and he wants to stay in this backrooms land. He likes it. He feels like this is where he belongs. This is home to him now, and he wants to stay. And Mary comes to what would be a realization of her own, is that she can't save everyone. She can't save Clark. She has her own trauma, and she's not going to be able to help Clark with what he's going through. And I think that that's kind of like a really good scene and a really important like revelation throughout the film of both people on opposite sides having a very similar revelation in different ways. Now, one thing I didn't mention in this dinner scene is Clark literally rips the stomach off of one of the copy people and hands it to Mary, like puts it on Mary's plate and puts it on his own plate. Like, you can eat the copies of people. To which I would assume that Clark has probably done to other things in the back room. There's also a scene when Clark opens the fridge. We see his employee, her head. We see her head severed off in the fridge. I don't know if that means he ate her or what, but it's there. And it's a pretty unsettling image. At this point, this is where we get a real glimpse of the entity. And for me, the part that this is where I didn't care for it. I always think that things are scarier when you don't really see them. And so seeing the full entity, it just didn't work for me. The entity is a image of Clark, basically. It's a copy of Clark as a pirate, and it's all wonky and goofy, and it just looks like like it looks claymation almost. Like he looks like a messed up Muppet or something. I don't know. It's just not scary to me. It's just goofy. And I feel personally like that just doesn't work for me in the realm of horror. He then talks to the entity, telling it that everything's okay and that Mary told him that they don't have to change. They can stay here forever. To which the entity then gives Clark the uppies and presents this scene as a way of closure, and that Clark can live here with his entity eating his stuffing people, only to then have that ripped away from him when the entity takes a good old chunk out of his shoulder and then starts destroying him. Mary then freaks out, of course, and makes her way through different rooms of the back rooms, running for her life from this messed up Muppet. She makes her way to the main floor of the furniture store, only to realize it's also a copy, and she's still in the back rooms. She is in this scuffle then with the beast of Clark once it finds her, and before it can take a good old stuffing chunk out of her, she bashes him over the head with the same piece of concrete that she had from when she was a child. And she just really like wails into this creature's head until he lets go and the concrete like breaks all over the floor. Almost like a release of her own trauma, I think, is what that whole scene is about. To me, at least, it presents this like letting go and acceptance and all of that good stuff. She then makes a sprint for an exit between these like walls, and as she's like running through the walls, she's then sprayed by some sort of knockout gas by the crew of Among Us. These dudes in full hazmat suits just knock her out with this gas and bring her to what will be the next scene, which is when we cut, we're in this room. Looks almost like a interrogation room of sorts. Mary's sitting there waiting to be interrogated, and this scientist, Phil, enters, and he explains he's with the company Async. Now, if you look into the lore of the Backrooms, Kane Parsons' version of the Backrooms, Async is the company that is responsible for creating the Backrooms. They successfully tore a hole between us and a parallel dimension. And because of that, they have been studying the Backrooms. They created this gateway in their facility called the Complex, which is where we're at in this movie at the end. Phil tells Mary that he just wants to know what's going on in the Backrooms. They just want to know more about what this place is. And he asks, you know, what she sees and what she can tell him and what all areas has she explored? Like he's trying to gain any sort of knowledge out of her he can because they really want to understand what the Backrooms is. And you can tell they're still in the Backrooms. If you look out the window in the background, you can see like the fake clouds, and to me it just tells me like they're still in the Backrooms. Mary then asks Phil what's going to happen to her, to which Phil gives her that "that's not my decision" kind of answer. And you can kind of tell she's like accepted that she's never going to escape this place, and she's probably either going to be studied, locked away, or just put down. Mary gives him the answer that she was given by Clark, which is the famous line of it's like explaining a dog to someone who's never seen a dog and then asking them to draw it. The final shots of the movie are really cool. You see the Backrooms starting to morph from what were Clark's memories to now Mary's memories. And that's kind of how the film ends, is with the Backrooms shifting. Yeah, I mean, overall, like I said, there were a couple of things like that I didn't really care for, mainly seeing the entity, but that's just maybe that worked for some people. Maybe people loved it and it just wasn't for me. And that's cool. Like I said, some of the lines, the way they were delivered just also didn't work for me. I can't point any specific ones right now. I'm sure on my second watch I'll have more. But just a couple of pacing issues and stuff like that. I mean, overall the movie though was fantastic. I enjoyed it a lot. It's definitely a 4.5 out of 5 for me. So have you seen the Backrooms? Did you like it? Do you have any theories of your own? Please leave a comment, like, subscribe, tell me what you thought. I want to hear. And I'll see you guys next time.